And so a look at the teams that have already qualified. Obviously USA, Canada and Mexico with automatic qualification as the host nations. You also see Japan, New Zealand, Iran, Argentina and Uzbekistan there too. Just like that, more people have joined us in the studio. We've got Ryan O'Hanlon and Jeff Carlisle, because we do need to talk about the US men's national team in town here, discovering the delights of Bristol once again, due to that game coming up, a friendly between the US and Turkey on Saturday in East Hartford. But we must talk about what's ahead. And I know that you've got an article coming out, a depth chart tomorrow, Ryan, on ESPN FC. However, we love to get ahead of ourselves here on this show, as you guys know well. We have asked you and tasked you with putting together a starting 11 for 2026 with the US. Talk us through it.
Yeah, I think the starting 11 actually looks pretty good, even though almost none of the players that we're going to see on it are going to play in the Gold Cup, unfortunately. So Matt Turner in goal, not really playing for Crystal Palace, but also no one on the team is really challenging him in any way. I think the fullbacks, Serginho Dest and Anthony Robinson, are like fantastic, probably the strongest part of the team. The center backs, Mark McKenzie and Chris Richards, I think they need a little bit of time together, but there's a lot of potential there. I think the midfield is maybe the strongest area on the team beyond the fullbacks, with Tyler Adams, Johnny Cardozo, Weston McKennie, Tim Weah and Christian Pulisic. The wingers, we're used to those. That's been the winger duo since the World Cup. And then as long as he can stay healthy, I think Falar and Belligan will be playing up top.
What are the expectations here then, Jeff, for the US next year?
I think the expectations are to go to at least the quarterfinals. I mean, they are the host country, and they've been building for this. At least emotionally, they've been building for this, for the last several years. And so, especially when you hire a manager with the pedigree of Mauricio Pochettino, I think that just adds to it. Now, health will play a big part of it, as we're discovering with the Gold Cup coming up, and some of the players that are missing. But especially with this group having done quite well, I thought, in 2022. I mean, they went about as far as you would expect, but they were able to get out of that group, and then they fell to a very good Dutch side. So I think the expectation is that they're going to go one step further than that and really make a mark for themselves in this tournament.
Quarterfinals. When we're talking about tiers of where this side would fall, if you're saying a top tier side coming into the World Cup would be a Spain and Argentina, what tier or what level are we looking at with this US team?
I would say you're really looking at, say, third tier. I mean, if you've got countries that can win it, and then countries that might surprise, I think the U.S. is just under that. And I'm saying that because I have a lot of doubts about this team. I think the performances that they've delivered over the last year have not really been impressive at all. Now, some international teams have done very well at World Cups, having not played well in the run-up. So that could certainly play out for the United States. But really, right now, I have a lot of doubts about this side and who's going to be there and what form they're going to be in.
They've got the home crowd behind them. Quarter-final, attainable for this US team?
It's attainable only if they get a good draw. Otherwise, I don't see how it happens. I mean, right now, looking at that team, if they're all at their very best, then that's possible. But the problem is, what's the chances of all of them being fit and healthy and playing, and also being at their best? The goalkeeping situation is a complete and utter horror show for me. You need a goalkeeper who's going to make at least one save in a game to make a difference. And Matt Turner isn't putting the gloves on. And as Ryan says, there's nobody pushing to get in front of him. So that's a complete disaster for me. Sergio Dest as well. I don't trust Dest. I don't trust his character, to be honest. Again, at his best, he's good. But there's too many players on that team I don't trust. I don't trust Balogun. You take Pulisic out, Pulisic's injured. Where's the goals coming from? Yes, that middle piece you're talking about, that little triangle in the middle of the park, looks really strong. I absolutely agree with that. But where's the goals coming from? You've got to score goals to win a game. And as I said, defensively, particularly in the goalkeeper situation, you play against anybody, you could be in trouble.
Could you see a quarter-final stage for this US side?
I think it's possible, but I tend to agree with Stevie. I feel like we have the top tier is Spain, Brazil, France, and Argentina maybe. Then we have the Portugals, Italy's below that. And then it just feels like there's like a glut of teams between like 10 and 25 that are just like, there's not a huge difference between them. So I do think that a quarterfinal appearance is possible, one, because soccer is random and upsets happen, and two, if a good draw happens. But I think with the new setup, it seems like the way the draw will work, the U.S. is going to play someone who won their group in the second round if they win their group. And that means they're going to play one of those top 10 teams that we talked about. So to me, I think success is making it to the round of 16. I think if they make it to the quarterfinals, then yeah, you give them an A.
You do have the outliers though, Shaka. Think about Morocco in the last World Cup all the way to the semi-finals. Go back to 2002, South Korea with the nation behind them all the way to the semi-finals as well. Why not the US?
Well, and that's the question here, especially as a host nation. And normally when we're talking about outliers, it's one of those host nations who can't, because you do get a good draw. We'll see how that pans out, given that 3 nations can lay claim to hosting. So they certainly will get a good first round draw, and then you see from there. And then to your point, Kay, it's anybody's game in terms of how things pan out, who's in form. Suspensions may very well play a part. The extended format, again, throws up a certain level of uncertainty that, as we sit right now, we can't speak to or use example around. And then I share the same concerns of everybody here, that there are teams coming into this tournament who there's probably 4 or 5. It's win or not. If you don't win, it's seen as a disappointment. There's 4 countries at least who can lay claim to as much. Another 5 or 6 who, if you don't at least get a final or at the very least a semi-final, again, that's seen as a disappointment. And then the US kind of following in from there. And here's my concern. The centre-forward position is a concern. As everybody's mentioned, while Balogun certainly gets a nod right now, nobody's laid real claim to that starting position. And then in previous tournaments, I think the US have been able to put out a better back 4 than the one we just saw on that full screen. And even in doing that, you asked a lot of your goalkeeper. US has always been able to rely heavily on their goalkeeping talent. Now, again, kind of given Matt Turner's position, or lack of it in club level, I'm not sure that he is as reliable as names gone by. So all those things put together, really the only plus is the draw, a potential good draw, but nothing else in terms of players, in terms of playing, is filling me with an awful lot of confidence.
Let's talk about the coach. Is Pochettino the right guy to take this US men's team forward?
He's going to have to be. I think he's gotten a little bit of a baptism in terms of what this team is capable of. And I think just reading some of his comments, there have been some subtle jabs at the culture around the U.S. team. You even heard Tyler Adams say it after the Nations League, that guys were doing things with their clubs that they weren't necessarily bringing to the national team. And then you have Pochettino making his comments when one of the rosters was announced, saying, some guys want to come and play golf and go to dinner, and no, they have to really want this. And so I think that's the biggest challenge for him over the next 12 months, is really finding a bunch of guys that are going to spit fire for this team and really play with intensity, play with desire. And I think that's why a guy like Diego Luna is getting so many looks right now, because everyone sees that bloody nose and the blood streaming down his face and think, okay, that's a guy that really wants to play for his national team. And so I think Pochettino's got a lot of challenges ahead of him. I mean, he's got a great reputation as a man manager of, really reaching his players. He's going to have to pull off every trick in the book, I think, over the next year in order to do that.
I hope that's the way he's going. For too long, it's been all about this. We have to have an identity, and we need to play the super game, and we need to play the lovely game the way it's supposed. All the successful US teams in history have been about spitting and fire and fighting and punching and standing up strong. If he gets back to that, then it's possible you get a quarter-final, because you just fight your way through it, as previous US teams have done. So I hope that's the way he's going, because if he's going the beautiful game way, then he ain't getting near the quarter-final.
Your thoughts on Pochettino, Ryan, and trying to get this leadership and this commitment from his players?
Yeah, my concerns with Pochettino are more tactical. I kind of feel like U.S. soccer can get stuck in these ruts where they're they're chasing their own tail. They're chasing after these trends like 8 years after they existed. Like, we wanted to be England for a long time. I remember how many English coaches I had growing up. Now it seems like we want to be Spain and dominate possession. But that like slow possession style of soccer is really not in vogue anymore, and also like doesn't fit the U.S. players. I think what Stevie's talking about, it has like a tactical application in that all of the players in the U.S. are at their best when they're able to run in space and play in transition. Under Pochettino so far, they're basically playing like Chelsea played under Pochettino. It's a ton of slow possession, and they just have such a hard time creating good chances. So I'm a little concerned with his ideas not matching up with the player pool at all so far, but hopefully, he's seen that, and the style that they try to play fits the players a little bit better going forward.
So, of course, there is the Gold Cup coming up. What will we learn from that about this side?
I don't think a whole lot as it relates to next year's World Cup. By my count, there are 4 starters out of Ryan's ideal 11 that are going to be on the field for any length of time, and so I think we'll get some answers in terms of fringe guys, or maybe like a Diego Luna, to see what they can do in a tournament setting. When there's pressure in these games, it's not just a friendly. I mean, granted, there's a kind of pressure for them in those games too, but you're going to see him really experimenting a little bit. And you kind of wish this had happened 2 years ago or at the beginning of the cycle, but this is the hand that Pochettino's been dealt. And so he's going to have to really try to see what he has, and especially in the attacking side, see what players can emerge, and then maybe help the U.S. team in a year's time.
What do you want to see from it, Ryan?
I think I'd like to see a little bit more of an emphasis on set pieces, which was another big thing under the U.S. in the past. They've been horrible at set pieces, despite hiring a famous set piece coach, Gianni Vio.
Stevie's favorite thing, set piece coaches.
It's unclear what he's doing currently. Yeah. I think that is like a very easy button for them to push, regardless of the personnel. And then I think you also just want to see, you want to come out of this tournament maybe with your center back pairing for the World Cup, because that's the one spot where it's kind of up in the air. I think how the players play together is more important at center back maybe than anywhere else in the field, and all of the good quality candidates for center back at the World Cup are on the roster. So I think we're not going to know a lot about whether this team can create an open play, because most of its good attackers aren't there. But the center backs are there, so hopefully you come out of it with an idea of who you want to be playing next summer.
Is this tournament important for the US, Shaka, the Gold Cup?
Should be. But I don't think, kind of given the squad, more to the point, given the omissions, that it will end up being. And now the challenge for me with the US and this Gold Cup and the weakened roster is that this is their last meaningful competition before the World Cup next year. While they're international windows, because you've already qualified, those are friendlies, no other way to look at it. And so it then becomes difficult to assess exactly where this team is going into the World Cup. And I know we're 12 months away. But that's the big ask for Pochettino, for this squad. How do they fare under meaningful competition when they're tested? We won't know until the World Cup.